It's two conscious guys talking, where conscious male leaders come together and have a discussion that is deep, that is nourishing, that allows us to see the illumination of consciousness that's unfolding progressively for men that are waking up in the world, and where you can get insights on your own awakening as a man, and also for amazing women that want to learn more about men's challenges and struggles that have created some of the dysfunction we've seen within men in its society, often called, quote unquote, the patriarchy and other terms. What created it? What is the genesis of it all? What can we do about it today to empower men to be all that they're meant to be and to support the awakening of consciousness for men and women and all?
GP, I'm so grateful to be here with you today. You had been on my podcast, and you definitely were somebody that I was like, man, he's really cool. I'm really grateful to know him, and had him on the show and everything. And you've got a lot of humor and a lot of great, wonderful wisdom to share with the world. So I appreciate we're here today.
Oh, thanks, Daniel. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So, yeah, and I was really intrigued to have this conversation with you because I know very little about this, but I just know you've done a lot of work in this area with men and all that sort of stuff. So I know that much. And beyond that, I don't know too much, but yeah, I mean, just how these conversations, I just remember like when we're talking about like growing up and what it's like to be a guy, and especially for me, I've been a sensitive soul, and for me it was, it's like, okay, I like the guy stuff to some degree, but then again, like some of this guy stuff is really out of control and stupid, and I got into playing the army and whatever, all that stuff too, like other boys, but another part of me was thinking, what are we doing? What's these things we do, right? And the fascination with cars, and guys are on cars all day on their notepads. I'm like, why are you so obsessed with cars? I mean, cars are cool, but so in some ways, very traditional guy, but then again, not so much, very sensitive, very more, maybe a deeper, I guess, than maybe most people and things like that. So we all have our own path as guys, and the way we were versus like what society is telling you, like, this is what it means to be a man, right? Where women got their own stuff for sure, big time, but men have their own thing. And so I'm wondering for you, like what, I know you have a very interesting background. I don't remember the details, but I remember a lot of cool stuff you shared in the last interview. But what was it like for you? I don't know how old you are, but like I was a 70s, 80s kind of kid. So it's still like, you two touchy-feely men, forget about it. You don't show enough like incredible like locker talk about women, then you must be gay, like it's more like that back then. It's a lot different now. So what was it like growing up when you grew up, with some of the stereotypes that you ran into? What was it like for you growing up as a boy, with these ideas of what it means to be a man?
Well, I'm 70. And so I grew up in the 50s and 60s, right? Mm-hmm. It was throughout the 50s, of course, it was the American dream, and the man, and the woman was at home, and all very traditionally still had how future housewives of America in school and things and things like that. And it's kind of really hard to describe the impact it has on you. I didn't really notice it until the Me Too movement happened, and I asked all the women I knew, and there was not one that hadn't been harassed in some way, some quite severely, and it just shook me to my core, to recognize just that that I grew up in a white male entitlement environment. It was assumed, even when it wasn't overt, right? It just overt misogyny or racism, it was just assumed. It was just part of the deal. I think it's really interesting. My brother's 5 years older than I, and the whole tumultuous thing that started in the 60s, right? And I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of stuff that happened at that time. The coming of the Beatles, the assassination of John F.K., the invention of the pill, right, for women, and subsequently the whole women's rights movement, the race riots and racial stuff, the Vietnam War and the protests. I was in Chicago in 1968, the famous Democratic convention. It was just this incredibly tumultuous time. It affected my brother not the least. He just went on as if nothing happened, and I got completely immersed in it, right? And it had a profound effect. I was a musician on top of that, and of course I was playing rock and roll, so all the music I played was basically coming from Black people, right? So it was a completely different experience that I started to have. But even in the 60s, with all of that going on, that white male entitlement was still there, in the way that I thought of women, and the way my friends did it, and the like. And of course, you can understand what that's about, because the boy, and then he becomes a man. There's stability in that. I know who I am. I know how I'm supposed to be, right? Mm-hmm. And with all of this stuff going on around you, all of that eventually getting really, really challenged, and to the point where you really don't know where you fit in anymore, right? And that's literally what happened. I saw that as I was growing up. It was like there was no such thing as a job that a woman couldn't do equally well, if not better, than a man. I was a consultant of a bunch of corporations, and I found women, on the whole, were better managers than men were, because they simply could handle people better. Men, once they don't have a hierarchy, don't know what the hell to do. They get completely lost. It's kind of the only model. If my inherent sense of value gets challenged, where do I go? And it was very confusing. Now, fortunately, I had some deeply spiritual experiences that opened me up to a completely different way of looking at things. But it wasn't until the 90s that I really came to terms with the whole masculine entitlement, and what it really meant to be a man. Mm-hmm. Beyond the stereotypes, it became really clear that they were gone. Right, the stuff we could depend on, it's like, this is what a man is, and this is what you can be, and expect it to be that way, and expect to be treated like that. Gone, poof. So what happens? We all need a reference point. We need some place to build a sense of identity, and a sense of purpose, and a sense of community. Where do I fit? And of course, that whole thing it was a breakdown on all the gender sense of identity on both sides, which led to utter chaos in relationships, right?
Yeah.
And just totally confusing. How do I be? Is it disrespectful if I open the door for her? I mean, it really could get down to things like that. Right. Just total. Exactly what do I don't know what the hell to do.
Right.
I'm completely lost. Well, eventually, I found my way into there was a movement that got started in the 90s, the mythopoetic men's movement. Sam Keen and the book Iron John. There was a whole bunch of stuff, and I when I moved to New York City, I met this fellow, world-class photographer. He was Paul McCartney's photographer. We became really good friends, and he invited me to join this men's group. Mm-hmm. And part of the criteria for joining this men's group was there were 2 different male initiation rituals you had to go through. And so I did. And they were intense. Wow. It was no small deal, but it was also just a completely different view of men meeting as men with all the characteristics as men in an environment that was totally safe and accepting. And I was part of that men's group for 5 years, right? And this is not insignificant. We met once a week in person at somebody's house for 3+ hours. And then we had a contact, we had a goal buddy that we would talk to every single day. And now, how many men get that level of support from other men who have integrity and and you can trust them with your life for 5 years straight, right?
Wow.
The impact it had on me was just unimaginable. Even after I'd left New York and I wasn't in that group anymore. And since then I've done stuff. I've done events for men. I had a project once called the Balls Project, which was an online forum for men. It went on for a couple of years. Just couldn't get enough men into it to be able for it to be self-sustaining. I wanted to keep the price really low and the like. But I put out 400 or 500 videos, and we had ongoing stuff going on. And there's still a lot of people who remember it, and I wish it was still around, because we simply don't get that kind of support. So it brought me to a place where the important insight is that while I couldn't rely on anything in the culture or the society to give me that definition anymore, right? That there were things I could look to. There were certain natural characteristics to the male body, to the male emotional system, to the male psyche, and they were natural, right? They were not artificially imposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, with all of that taken away, I could get to the pure essence of it. It wasn't colored anymore by all this other stuff. And as a result, it opened up the door for me, having just an enormous amount of healing around women, my relationships to women. I remember once in particular, I was in the group, and I was doing this process called the Stettbacher process. It was one of the early things. It was a little bit intense, abreaction, that kind of stuff. I don't do stuff that traumatic anymore. There are better, simpler ways. But while I was doing that and the processing, it finally came to and I'm in my early 40s now, right? It finally came to the surface that I'd never had a mother and I was never going to.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this explosion inside of me, because my mother was mentally ill. It was just a constant. It was a constant battle my whole childhood. I never felt safe. I never felt loved. She hated men, right? Clearly, she had so many symptoms of being sexually abused when she was a girl. We even found some evidence of it. My sister and I. So later on, I could understand what had happened, but the impact was on me, and I realized that I never had a mother. And it hit me so hard, I literally wept for 5 days.
Wow.
There was just such this outpouring that I was never going to have a mother. I was never going to know what that was like. But it was a breakthrough, because I could now, instead of trying to compensate for that unconsciously, right, I could face it directly. And everything just transformed. My relationships with everybody transformed, but especially with women. I learned how to be with women. I acquired a real deep appreciation of that feminine energy,
Mm-hmm.
and my role with that, right, and how to be with that, and how to respect that, and how to bring the masculine to it. As a result, it did settle into a place that had a different reference point. I was free of the social bounds, but I wasn't free of the bounds of nature. And so I could take on that role. And Joseph Campbell put it beautifully. He said, "Women are life, men are the protectors of life." And it's such a powerful thing to recognize that when when those two energies are really flowing together, that both are free to be fully what they are. And it's the kind of thing that it was ingrained so deeply. Stuff still comes up. I'll still find my things coming up, and of course I can see around just all of the emotional immaturity of our leaders, and business leaders and political leaders and stuff like that. They're basically our world is run by boys in men's bodies, which are the most dangerous creatures on the planet.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of truth to that. Running around in men's body, being billionaires and politicians, presidents, whatever, I mean, it's for somebody like yourself, people like me or whatever, like, you can pretty much just see right through it, right? You see exactly what's happening for these people. Like, you just see, okay, I see where that's coming from. And you just get an attunement to that, and it just is what it is. And you
look for an opening. If you do have a relationship with somebody like that, you look for an opening that can kind of crack open that shell. But a lot of these people, the truly dangerous ones, are so insulated from any kind of exposure to that, and the feedback mechanism keeps telling them, oh yeah, this is the right way to be,
right,
the rewards and stuff. So they learn to ignore that inner voice that says something's wrong,
right,
something is off here, and it's there. You can't kill that. I mean, that's the voice of the truth. You cannot get rid of that. You certainly can't bury it and obscure it so badly that you don't feel it.
Right. And you're convinced that the way you're being is the right way, and it's the only way. But this is the way. So I can definitely see that. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. So I really appreciated you had a lot to share, which is not unusual when I asked that question at the beginning. There's so much I could respond to there. Wow. So I like talking about it because I do think it makes some difference. I'm 53 now, and so there's some differences, with different ages and whatnot. What people have dealt with, like people are younger men, they're like, I don't know, kids got picked on a little bit, or to some degree if they were gay or whatnot. But when it was my age, it was definitely a big huge negative deal. It's like, this is not right, or what, basically it was all that stuff. And back it's unheard of, like that's unspeakable, probably more so, and I would imagine your age, right? So definitely there's been progress there. And just, I think, it's interesting, like there's this backlash too, even for men that are what do they call them, beta males and metrosexuals or whatever, like now there's like, well, now you're not a real man, now we gotta get back to being real man, get back in the cave, and reject that stuff. And we lose in that, I think there's so validity maybe in some of those ideas sometimes, but at the same time, it's like we're not appreciating like the evolution too, and some of the sincere energy that was buried. It's been buried for so long, and now it's finally able to start coming out, and it's still not completely safe, so to speak, but it's getting better. At least it's going in the right direction. But every single guy I've talked to, I'm sure it'll be true if I talk to, thousands of guys, I'll say, like, you can't, you got to have your defenses up all the time as a guy. You got to be ready to fight at any moment. You got to, you can't show your emotions too much. Forget the emotions. Just if it's a competitive situation with a guy, for most guys, it's like win at any cost. Like, I mean, these are all, you got to be, it's almost like, because of the culture, some people think it's biological. I would say it's cultural more than biological, but like this idea you've got to be the alpha male, basically. You got to be the top of the food chain. That's how you're going to get the best success, the best women, like the best mothers, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that might be natural in lobsters or something, but it's not natural in humans. I mean, yeah, there are some hierarchies out there that operate like that, and our primitive ancestors had some of that. But it wasn't all there was to it. And of course, we've evolved beyond that. Right. We don't need to define ourselves in those terms anymore. And I was never competitive. I was in gymnastics in high school, and I just hated meets. I didn't want to compete. I just liked jumping around on the trampoline, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I did until I was just getting stoned all the time, and that didn't really work together very well. Get flips and stuff while you're wasted didn't work out well. Boy, it's all restrictions on any mode of behavior that comes through naturally is socially imposed and is morally wrong. It's an attempt to take an individual and make them fit into a pre-existing set of ideas and beliefs and assumptions and behaviors, right? Which allows for no wiggle room, right? Anybody who doesn't fit in that, and yes, it's gays, metrosexuals, transsexuals, right? Because they don't fit into that. It was also hippies when I was right. It was creatives, right? I mean, the artistic type. I mean, it's like what the society wants to deal with is an extremely narrow area. What's fascinating, though, is if you look at Aboriginal cultures like Native Americans and others of North America and South America, African tribes and the like, and the whole period of hunter-gatherers from it wasn't like that.
Right.
It wasn't a strict hierarchy. Hierarchies formed among men, but the culture as a whole was matriarchal. There was this horizontal kind of interconnection going on, and somebody growing up in that environment, the male initiation ritual was to take the boy and make him aware of his own mortality and his dependency on the group, but the group recognized the individual abilities of each one. And so there was this wonderful dance between, I am a unique individual, and at the same time I have a responsibility to the whole, but they have a responsibility to me too, right? We've lost that. We've completely lost the social contract. We've completely lost the part of it where my individuality is what is most valued, and that's the gift I have to give to the whole. Right now, the whole doesn't want that. It wants me to be a cog in their wheel. It wants me to just go to school, get a job, buy lots of shit.
Another brick in the wall, right? As they say.
another brick in the wall, and there's just more and more rebellion against it. And you can tell because the social forces are getting more and more aggressive. Right? They're getting more and more restrictive. They're putting more, which is where the real genuine power of masculinity has to come to the surface, which is one that is an absolutely resolute conviction in the equality and the necessity of everybody being valued for who they are. No other way. There are no concessions to that, and that this is what we need to be doing to build, and that doesn't include just people. It includes the planet. It includes animals. It includes everything. Because we are one interrelated thing, and the survival of us depends on the survival of everything else on the planet.
Yeah.
And we can see where the man boys have taken, because it is the naive, aggressive selfishness of a child that's never been exposed to what their role is within the whole. So you've got, companies that can basically suck, leave Flint without any water, right? Or are more interested in selling weapons than restricting them so we don't have school shootings. This is an insanity, right? Of the boy who never became a man.
Mm-hmm.
Not capable of seeing the consequences of his own actions and his relationship to the whole. And this is the line, the dance we have to do. It is a constant dance between my individuality and my relationship to the whole. And the whole, as we've developed, it's such a schism. On one side, I just want to do whatever I feel like doing.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, we got, you're going to do what I want you to do, and I don't really care what you want to do. And you can see it's just nothing but this is going to come from that.
Right.
This is the role of the awakened male.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's got to be a space, for people to, in a one-to-one level, much less on a collective level. We have to just be willing to hear people. It's just been shown again and again, right? Like we've all seen the interviews probably, but you have I forget, like this minister, black man. He goes to the Ku Klux Klan, and he's like, so what's going on? He hangs out with them. He's like willing to just listen to them and be like, okay, here where you're coming from. All right. By the time he's done, like they all change their mind. And he literally isn't like just sitting there yelling at it, telling them like, well, you're crazy. Why would you think that? He literally is just listening in an acceptance of where they are. And then he will share something. But we think like this warring of energy is what's going to get it done, right? Let's get these men in shape. That's right. Yeah. That's actually kind of what the problem's been all along at one level too, though, right? As long as we get those men in the right working order, if those soldiers set up right, that's what we get.
That's absolutely correct, and it's just an enormous amount of courage, and that's real masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
To just go there and say, okay, I'm meeting you here on your own terms. I'm not going to try to force you into position. So, and it's disarming on top of that, even looking at it strategically. When somebody who you hate shows up and is nothing like the image you have of him,
mm-hmm.
you're kind of like, what do I do? What weapon do I pull out?
Right.
Okay. It was the effect that Gandhi had. They couldn't deal with him.
Right.
For that very reason. He was absolutely resolute. They said to him, what do you want us to do? Just leave? He says, yes, that's exactly what I want to do.
Exactly.
and he just, but he knew the moment he did anything violent, he was playing their game.
Right.
Yeah. And so he just was resolute. He kept showing up, and they did. They literally left.
Yeah. It's amazing. And he was doing exactly what you're right. He did the same exact thing I just described, right? He was the same way. Yep. I remember reading, because I've read books on him. It's a guy that I channel even and everything. I've got a picture of him behind me. You can't see, but it's like, people literally say, just don't take any meetings with him. He's going to change your mind. Don't meet say, right? That was their way of trying to cope with him. None of us are, like all these people, like they all had wounds and everything. Like Gandhi had his downfalls, right? We're all human. That's the beauty of it. It's like we all have our issues. With him, it was with his kids and how aggressive he could be with people as close to and whatnot. He's kind of out of control at times, right? So, but everybody, it's like, but coming to a place of deep recognition first of what the situation is. That's what I'm saying. Like when I'm having these conversations, like, okay, well, what created all this? I mean, my dad, he acted like a macho man because he was bullied when he was a kid, and then he had to show up and try to be act as though, I can take you all out, right? Like then that persona, then that gets transferred to me to some degree, right? And I'm like, but then I'm living in opposition to it too. Oh, he was like a racist at some levels, the way he would talk, and then he'd be like, oh, I'm just joking or whatever. But then, there's all this like crap, that was coming. And I love my dad. I mean, my dad was amazing at the same time. So it's like a mix of stuff. He's so nurturing. He's so awesome in other ways. So it's like it was totally kind of a confusing picture as a role model, right? So like I take the love away from it as much as everything, because it was really profound. It was really deep love that I could feel from him, which is more than some people get. Like with your mom, like, then we've got how we are with our moms, and you had that dynamic with your mom where she just wasn't available. She wasn't. That's what it sounds like, anyway. I mean, I don't know, but
she was incapable of giving me anything other than what she gave me.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't even in the mix. There was no choice. There was nobody choosing anything
there.
Right. She was just reacting completely unconsciously, and the impact. I came to terms with that. You go through the once you understand what's actually happening, it's just like, why did this happen? This is the most ridiculous thing, and the blame game for a bit, and then you realize that this is just the way it is, and you'd be very grateful that you're the generation that finally woke up to it and can put a stop to it, so that it didn't get passed on to my kids, right? And that's just a level of consciousness that emerges, that it's almost spontaneous. Well, it was spontaneous for me. I wasn't seeking any kind of higher consciousness. It found me. Obviously, there was a crack there of enough suffering that it broke through.
Right.
Because it's nothing I would have come to. I just wanted to be a rock and roll drummer. Get all the chicks, right? That's all I wanted.
You want.
What more can anybody want, right?
Yeah. That's the dream. I mean, every man wants that, right? It's the ultimate dream.
Oh, God. Yeah, of course. That's that's the whole deal. But it was very, the times, they were very narrow, and you can really trace this back. If you really wanted to go into look at the whole thing, it really came out of the fact that the culture we lived in as hunter-gatherers, which was very tied to the earth, and therefore there was a reference point that was very solid, right?
Yeah.
And in that reference point, we acknowledged the earth, we acknowledged the relationship with it, we acknowledged the nature of men and the nature of women, how they would work together. And so there was this harmony that went on for a very, very long period of time. But then we discovered agriculture. We could actually grow and save food, so we didn't have to wander all the time. And it was out of that the city-states happened, and hierarchies, and this whole thing took place, and a completely different sense of identity took over, and the masculine dominated it, justified the domination, and it has continued. That whole thing has continued to this day. So what I see as a breakdown is not just this particular society, but the whole way we have organized as human beings for the last 12,000 years. I see this, we're going through an epoch shift. This isn't just we're going to have a kinder, gentler society when we're done. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but it's not going to be this.
Right.
Because the foundations for this have just, they've bit their nose off to spite their face. Because as long as you are suppressing individuals, it is individuals that bring innovation and energy to any system.
Right.
If you stifle that, the system dies. It has to have this constant inner creative tension, you might say.
Right.
In order, all dynamic systems do. All organisms do. And the effect we've had on the environment is such that we're going to have to become something completely different, or we will basically wipe ourselves out.
Right.
And it sounds like a dire warning, and it is, right? I think we as men, we can't put our head in the sand. We have to realize what we've done, right? And do our best, to protect the planet. If men are the protectors of life, right? That means all life.
Mhm.
not just a couple. So the idea of us extending that sense of protection to the whole human family, the whole animal family, the whole plant family, it just kind of opens up our heart to a really solid purpose
Mhm.
for one's life.
Mhm.
That it isn't just about me.
Right.
It isn't just about the accumulation of
Yeah.
stuff. It isn't just about whether I have, the freedom for self-expression or not. I need to know that everybody is getting to enjoy that freedom of self-expression, that they're able to rise to whatever level that they can rise to,
Mhm.
that they're taken care of, that nobody goes to bed hungry.
Mhm.
I mean, uh, this to me it should be in the heart of every single man. And every single man does have that. Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
The problem is there's too many man boys.
Yeah, true. True. I agree with that. Absolutely. I love that. I love that framing. And I really have said like all the ideas, again about like like climate change and all this. I always say like, yeah, okay, we want to look at all the science, but the number one thing is getting back to the relationship we've had with the earth from thousands and thousands of years. That is the solution. That is the direct. Because if you're doing that, you'll start to live in accordance with harmony with yourself, the planet, everything. Right. So it really does come down to a relationship with the planet, like as much as anything else. I mean,
Well,
it's really
it's
huge.
our only touchstone. It's the only real touchstone. Once we had agriculture and we could actually start manipulating the environment, we detached from it because now it was something we could control. And look at our modern religions, Abrahamic religions, right? Are all that the earth is fallen, nature is fallen, and it's up to us to, to fix it.
Mm,
Prior to agriculture, there was no concept of property. You
right.
didn't own the earth. Nobody could own. How do you own the earth, right? How do you own the air?
Right.
There was, I owned a blanket, maybe a horse.
I even have a
That was
pet
the
there now, JP. So you can pay me royalties for every breath you take.
But then the idea of property, and of course, was property it came the idea of hierarchy, of ownership, of power, right? Of course, owning land was the main power all the way up until the late 1900s, when the robber barons and the like, when the gradual transition. Now the number one source of power is Wall Street, is the market.
Mhm.
Whereas before, power was all determined. I mean, United States, it was run by the only people who would vote were white males who owned land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
Everything was governed by that. So it was instituted, and it was just such an underlying assumption, right?
Right.
It was never ever questioned,
Right.
right? Until we ran out of land, right? And now we got the stock market, which is complete madness, right? There's really nothing of value. It adds nothing. It takes money, but it adds absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do. I could go off on that for, but again, what you see is boys trying to define themselves, give themselves a sense of identity in terms of what the culture has decided is valuable. And so the billionaire is lionized as if there's some remarkable thing. I mean, I was just horrified when I saw the space race between Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, right? Between the three of them, they spent $15 billion on this space ride. And I was just appalled, right? I was just appalled. The most visible midlife crisis on the planet. It's like, what the hell are you doing? That amount of money could have made a sustainable environment for literally millions of people that would have gone on for generations. And instead, this is what happens, though, that when the social value system has become so degenerate, that the accumulation of property, I mean, what started back 12,000 years ago, so I can grow my crops in peace, has become so bloated out of proportion that, well, to look at it, you realize how insane it is. But it's still the central value that men govern themselves by, right? It was very interesting that there was a study done at Harvard, and I think it was like 2015 or something. For the first time in history, they would give various kinds of tests and stuff to the incoming freshmen in the business, especially in the business school. And for the first time in the history, there were more people that were interested in having a job that made a difference and was satisfying than for making money. First time ever in their history.
That's huge.
That's huge. Yeah. And that is what's happening. People like to make fun of the Gen X and the Gen Z and millennials and that sort of thing. It's like they've seen that the whole thing is bullshit. They've seen it's a fraud.
Yeah.
And that it benefits a very few. And why in the world do I want to spend my entire life working for this guy to be so wealthy, and if I do anything wrong, he fires me. And there's nothing, I have no recompense. It's like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
I have people complaining they're all lazy. No, they're not. They see through the ruse.
Yeah, I mean, recognizing, I think every age has their own wisdom, right? I mean, I think the people back in the 50s living the way they were, they'd have certain values and perspectives that were wise, that maybe we've lost that. And then they were very diluted in other ways. So I think, every age has their delusions and their wisdom that they bring. And but that is amazing. Like people, I take it for granted, maybe it is privilege, maybe, who knows? I don't know. But I take it for granted that because of my upbringing maybe and everything, but the idea of like living the life you want to live and just going for that, like I think was always something that was around for me, maybe more so than a lot of other people. So the idea of doing it. So then when I hear statistics, like even to this day, like, most people are still working for a paycheck, though, even though there's more of an interest in the idea of like, no, I want to live my own life. It's probably, maybe it's getting really close now after the COVID thing, but the great resignation or whatever they call it. But like, we get a lot closer perhaps, but probably most people are still mostly working for a paycheck. I mean, but like that idea to me is just so kind of archaic, it's like, because it's like if we could strip away the fears of survival that are so wired in us, right? Like, I mean, that's the good thing about all the development we had is like, people were starved and everything, but then there was wisdom in that, because it's like, we're not gonna live forever, like this idea of preserve life forever, and we could master this domain and completely, and this delusion, and not realizing like to accept life as it is at the same time, though, like there's got to be this like sort of balance. Some people call it masculine and feminine or whatever, but like this balance needs to be there for us to experience the wholeness that we are. And, it's just like, things get out of whack. That's for sure. No doubt about that.
Yeah, they do. They do. I mean, the mission is to discover it. We're in a really interesting and a very pivotal time, right? Because we are no longer governed by nature. Between the technology and the skills we've developed and our intellect.
Well, let me just, if I could interrupt just for this one time. Sure. Maybe for now we can get away with it, right? Like we're not governed by nature anymore, but just wait a little bit longer. We'll see about that.
Well, she will ultimately have the last word, right?
Right.
But but we've gotten to that point where we can, right? And of course, but at the same time, there were all these primitive drives of that got distorted, right? Rather than being the community, it became deeply selfish, or just my group, and that sort of thing. Very and the like. The thing that has also emerged is a new level of consciousness, and what we have to resolve is that when we thought we were controlling nature, we get to the point where we could control nature. We were drunk with our own power, right? And we didn't think there was any limit to it, right? The idea that we could actually pollute the planet so badly that we could wipe out life didn't even occur to us. We were just, right now, but all of a sudden now we're in this position where, yeah, we have the power. We're not going to let it go, right? And either we're going to push it to the breaking point, it's going to take us all with it, or we're going to learn how to work with it. We're going to recognize our powers and our ability, but like the kid who went through the male initiation ritual, he's going to recognize that he has a relationship to the whole, and he can't mess up the whole, or we're all gone. And this is the level of maturity that we're being called to. Yes, we can do it, but what do we do with this now? I have to acknowledge the nature of the human mechanism, right? So on one level, there are these higher states of consciousness. There's still this body here that needs to eat, and it needs shelter, right? And it's still operating on a very primitive level, the reptilian stem, right? Am I safe or am I not safe? And I can't make that go away. And one of the things I have mentioned a lot about what happens to a lot of modern spirituality, including the New Age and the like, is that it tries to do that. It tries to say, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm going to transcend the body and all of that.
I'm ascending. We'll be done pretty soon anyway. So.
Yes, I'm ascending now. Yes, heading to 5D. It's like, good luck. Good luck with that.
Right. It's going to happen. One day I'll just be in 5D or whatever. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
Let me know the next time you get the flu.
Yeah, just had something like that. So yeah. How's the 5D going out?
But this is the beautiful opportunity that we have to actually consciously step into relationship with life as it is. This is the Tao. And if we do it, oh my God, it's going to be magnificent. If we don't, it'll be, well, next.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, really. I mean, I really I love the balance of your perspective, though, because you're like, okay, but the individual and their expression matters, and that's so primary as well. And yeah, we need to be utilizing our talents and gifts and our individuality and expression to be, as men, to be protectors of the whole, at the same time. So there's not a contradiction, because sometimes that's where we have a problem too. Like, it's all about individuality. We all do what we want. And then we got the other people are like, no, society has to have clear rules, and that's all we do. And the individual doesn't matter so much. And we got, all those but it's funny how sometimes how infrequently we don't consider the idea of both. Maybe both things are true. Like
they are both true.
Yeah,
they both coexist. And if you just stop for a minute and look, it's obvious they both coexist.
Yeah.
Right. You can't take a human being and make them into a totally obedient ant. Something inside, you may suppress it a lot, but something inside just there's an innate drive towards freedom and growth and self-expression, right? And that's there too. Now, if you put all the way to there and completely deny, right, the safety mechanism and all of that, it'll be a great life, but it'll only last about 15 minutes, right? You'll be jumping off buildings just to see what it feels like. Right? There's nothing.
Come back no problem.
There'd be nothing restricting it, and so it's got to be this dance.
Yeah.
And if you recognize that both of those are equally powerful elements in us, that you can see how that the safety side, That, by the way, are the first two chakras.
Mm-hmm.
That is the chakra 1 and 2, which I call the tribe and the nymph.
Mm-hmm.
That is the nature of us, right? And you can see how society has really been lopsided towards the safety mechanism and restriction and control, right? It is the dark side of the tribe, not the communal side of the tribe, because it refuses to acknowledge the other part.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a huge discovery. It led me to the process I invented called inner reconciliation, to get these two to dance. And you do that by the full acknowledgement of and being present with both. And it's a third position you take, which I call the peacemaker, which acknowledges the absolute necessity of both, and so it doesn't take sides. If you don't take sides, right? If I take the side over here, I automatically make this one an enemy.
Right.
I start resisting it. I start fighting it. I start demeaning it. I start trying to suppress it. But because it's natural, you can't suppress it. You can't get rid of it, right? So it's either gonna come back more aggressively. It's going to come out sideways. It's going to make distortions in your personality. It's going to affect everything because the Tao isn't there. The flow isn't there.
Right.
They're meant to dance together. And if you come to this place that recognizes that, and on a very practical level, it simply is being with your feelings as you're feeling. Notice that you can even do it right now. Just bring to mind something that you really, really want but don't have, right? And notice that if it really had not been important, you would have forgotten about it. But if it's still there, it means there's really something there. Right? So why don't you have it? Then you feel in to go, well, what in me doesn't want me to have that?
You're right.
And you can feel it. You can literally feel the two energies right there.
Yes.
And you'll notice that what we've done mostly, and this is what all self-help does, unfortunately, is take sides. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of the resistance, right?
Right.
Good luck. You might as well try to stop your hair from growing, right? I mean, it's just there.
Right.
But if you now go, oh, they're both absolutely necessary.
Right.
And in any given moment, one may be more important than the other. I mean, sometimes I need more safety than freedom. I need to kind of hold back, right? And other times, I don't need anything restricting me at all. Right? So it's it becomes, can freedom and safety coexist? Can they both be present at the same time? Can freedom freedom enhance safety, and can safety make it safe to be free? It's a completely different way. That's why I call it a reconciliation. You're getting these things that appear to be opposites to harmonize. Right. And it's a recognition of the nature of both, and an appreciation of the nature of both. Because without both, we're not humans.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, I got to say that this is a very, very awesome. All these things you're sharing are really, this is really good conversation. So I really feel that there's so much more that we're opening up to on so many levels, and it's I think the thing to maybe for people to embrace is, with the confusion, the great mystery we're in, right, of life, and how in our face the mystery is these days. When people are being honest, people are clinging more to certain positions because the greater the uncertainty, the more they need to be certain is their idea, right? But the more we can realize, okay, no, we need to embrace the great mystery of life, realizing we thought we knew way more than we really did ever anyway. Okay, maybe we don't know so much. We can be okay with that. We can be at peace with the way life is. The good, the so-called good and bad, it's all good, really. But like, okay, there's death and decay. We can be at peace with that rather than fighting against it all the time. We can be okay with the birth of new life, new ideas, new innovation, or whatever, new creativity. And we can be at peace with all of it, embrace all of it. see, that's the enlightened kind of consciousness that I want to embody even more myself, right? And for the world, it's like it's a great invitation. So I think your work, what you're talking about with that type of work, like that's definitely very key right now, because there's all the fighting, right? And then at the same time, the awakening's happening at the same time within all that. So it is a fascinating time for men and women, and trying to find really understand, like awaken the depth of who we really are, within all of it. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, because when you stop taking sides, you realize exactly how much is available.
Yeah.
When you really are bearing witness to the nature of life itself as reflected in this individual human body and mind, you become virtually imperturbable and invincible, because every circumstance you show up in, you won't be bounded by a preconceived notion, and as a result, you will have an infinite array of resources available to you to be fully present in any single moment that happens. That's both embracing the mystery and being the mystery.
Right.
But knowing that the mystery is not antagonistic to you. It is your very nature. And we limit ourselves by taking a strong position. And at times when we feel very insecure, which everybody does right now, it can either make for an opening to take place of confronting our own insecurity and where it's coming from, or it can be a doubling down, right? Where you become extreme, extremes in politics, or an evangelical, or a fundamentalist, right? And this is what we're seeing, and this is what's happening. And on one side, you have the opening that is taking place. You and I wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't, right? And the last gasp of the very narrow egoic sense of identity that is just deathly afraid of losing control.
Right. And it always seems what it comes back to is this idea: if I'm not in control, oh my God, what's going to happen? I don't know now. Now what am I going to do? Am I? And all that sort of thing. Yeah. How are we going to make it? How are we going to make it? Right. Oh my God. Yeah. So this is wonderful. We could go on forever, I'm sure, talking about this.
We could, yes.
Yeah. I mean,
there's have to have time limits in our world, but yeah, because it is such a rich subject to pursue. But let me just end with this, because the whole point is coming to terms with it. You find that while you didn't want to lose the control to feel safe, that it didn't actually make you feel safe, and discover what actually does. That is actually an innate characteristic in us that gets squeezed out of shape by these conflicts, because it ends up being self-rejection. So it is the beautiful thing is that the healing that will take place in any individual, where there's this reconciliation between the inner opposites, will automatically eradicate and soften all other relationships. It naturally just extends outward, and that self-acceptance becomes other acceptance, and begins to embrace very naturally the entire world. And that is the masculine energy that is expressed. That's the true warrior. It's the true sage. It's the true lover, right? I mean, it's all the various archetypes that we have for the male, because it comes out of the reconciliation with oneself.
Yeah, powerful stuff. So grateful to have this conversation with you, and I said, I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We go for hours and hours more, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, I think this is really, really awesome for men and women to listen to. And yeah, the idea that, we're going to control things, the men will control things. And then now women will start taking control. Well, not exactly. Right. So all these,
it doesn't work that way. Right.
Yeah. Genders and whatnot. And so, just help people like more deeply awaken, and realize, that we can do a lot of things, I suppose, to a degree. And then we find out that, by surrendering and letting go, like that's where the real deal is, ultimately, for me anyway. So anyway,
power.
Yeah. So
power.
Yeah. True power. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So GP, thank you so much. It's great delight, and look forward to further conversations with you in the future, and deeply appreciate the enormous wisdom and background you brought into it. Everything you had history, you had all kinds of things to bring into it. So I appreciate all of it. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Danny. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening in to Just Two Conscious Guys Talking, where our mission is to impact millions of men, ultimately, to deepen their awakening by examining their consciousness of what's been unfolding for them with male stereotypes and programming that has allowed them to have opportunities to evolve during these times. It's an exciting time to bring more love to men and women around the world, and we are grateful for you tuning in today. Feel free to share this episode and keep tuning in, and also look in the show notes for a link to get notifications of future episodes. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.